The year was 1948. Around 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their land, and the State of Israel came into being. The following year, the UN General Assembly created UNRWA, the refugee agency that works to offer basic services to Palestinians. But Israel has long objected to the UN agency.
We have seen increased attacks on the legitimacy of UNRWA, and we read that as increased attempts to delegitimize the category of Palestine refugees altogether. We see these attacks as very politically motivated.
Israel says the curriculums of UNRWA-run schools encourage incitement against Israel. The UN agency denies that. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been calling for UNRWA to be dismantled for years.
UNRWA regularly is accused of a set of recurrent things. The use of our premises by non-UNRWA entities, particularly by parties to a conflict. Or we're being accused of complicity with parties to a conflict.
But Israel's latest accusation has led to at least 17 countries stopping their funding to UNRWA, threatening the majority of its budget. And all on the word of Israel that 12 UNRWA staff in Gaza worked with Hamas. UNRWA carries out investigations into every allegation, and in this case has requested proof from Israel. Refugees say the funding withdrawal will be devastating to the 5.9 million Palestinians UNRWA provides services for.
If UNRWA is lost, so many things are lost with it. I won't be able to enroll my children in school, I won't be able to take my children to the doctor or go to the pharmacy.
Ireland's foreign minister thinks it's no coincidence that Israel's allegation came on the same day as the International Court of Justice ordered Israeli forces to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza. And he links the attacks on UNRWA to Israel's desire to erase the historic claim of Palestinian refugees and their right of return.
As part of a wider position around the right of return of refugees in the context of the establishment of a Palestinian state, if we were to arrive at a two-state solution, because the continuation of UNRWA is absolutely essential for a Palestinian state to emerge.
Something that Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says he cannot accept. Imogen, Kimber, Al Jazeera.
Chris Gunness is a former UNRWA spokesperson and joins us now from London. Mr Gunness, good to have you on the programme. We'll talk about sort of the medical needs of Gaza in a moment. I just wanted to ask, I mean, the effects of occupation you know all too well. I mean, is this case that's come to the ICJ in The Hague long time coming in your opinion?
It's 56 years too long in the coming, but make no mistake, this case is hugely significant and indeed unprecedented. It's the first time in the history of the UN that a quarter of the UN member states have gone to the highest judicial organ of the UN, the ICJ, and demanded that the court make an urgent determination, that is, to declare the occupation doubly illegal. Firstly, it's illegal in its imposition, so the apartheid system, the colonial Jewish settlements with 750,000 illegal Jewish settlers living on stolen Palestinian land, the home demolitions, the school demolitions, the torture of children in the middle of the night, the vicious settler violence, the blockade, and now this plausible genocide. The list goes on. But secondly, a quarter of the UN member states are asking the court to say that the occupation existentially, in and of itself, is illegal because it denies the Palestinians the right to self-determination. And Professor Philippe Sands, one of the legal counsels for the Palestinians, made this clear that UN member states must bring Israel's occupation to an immediate and complete end. And let me quote him: no aid, no assistance, no complicity, no contribution to forcible actions, no money, no arms, no trade, no nothing. So this was a major milestone in Palestine advocacy, because the spotlight is not just on the illegal practices of the Israeli army, the settlers, etc. It's now on the complicity in those crimes of the UN member states, the US, the UK, the EU. They are now under the spotlight. And guess what? The people on the streets in the Arab world, in the global south, in European, in Western capitals, they are now going to be saying to their governments, if you want Putin and Assad on the right side of international law, you guys better get on the right side too. So a major, major milestone.
OK, in terms of milestones, let's just focus in and put the spotlight then onto Gaza. I mean, to get your head around the issue of what it means to live under occupation is hard for the majority of us around the world. You can, to a certain extent, understand that because you've worked in Gaza. Can you put just into a few words what it's like for a person to feel and to live under occupation and the pressure that creates?
Well, I had an email literally a few hours ago from a colleague who I'd done an amazing project with in Gaza to help special needs children who couldn't see properly, who were partially sighted. And he said that 2 nights ago, his eldest son, who was about to qualify to be a dentist, died in a bomb which hit the neighbour's house. He has now been displaced 3 or 4 times. He's living with his wife, his 4 daughters, and his son. They have lost absolutely everything. He says they go to bed hungry. The children go to bed crying because they're so hungry. They wake up hungry. They're buying water from illegal water carts, knowing that it's not clean. They all end up with diarrhea in flats which they're sharing with 30, 40 other people. It's that, I hope that paints a really humanized picture of what it means to live in what the UN is calling an unprecedentedly barbaric attack. That's what it means today for an individual that I know personally, and that's one among many.
I know that when you were in position, you always highlighted how difficult it was to get aid into Gaza or the occupied West Bank. I mean, how difficult, or what were the medical facilities like before October the 7th, to obviously what we're hearing, as we just heard from Dr. Rick Peppercorn, I mean, how devastated that the medical infrastructure is right now. How difficult was it trying to get medical aid into Gaza?
Look, even before the 7th of October, part of the Israeli strategy to impose a collective punishment, an illegal collective punishment on Gaza, was to deprive the main hospitals of the medical equipment and the medical supplies that they needed. So it was pretty much impossible to get tertiary care for cancer, those sorts of care, absolutely impossible. And of course, since the 7th of October, we hear of children having amputations without anaesthetic, women giving birth, caesarean section without anaesthetic. It has become utterly barbaric. And that is now, on top of all this, we're seeing the slow massacre, the starvation. We're seeing people falling ill. We're seeing communicable diseases. We're seeing reports of people literally dropping down of exhaustion on the ground, of hunger and exhaustion. So, you know, that is a portrait, if you like, of a medical service which is not on its knees. It's been completely destroyed. The UN Secretary General has said that the humanitarian response, the humanitarian system in Gaza is completely destroyed. And that's why I say what we need to do is mobilize a massive international effort. We can no longer leave the protection of Palestinians, health, education, food, water, electricity, all these things in the hands of the Israelis. They're committing what the ICJ is calling a plausible genocide. We need to get a presidential order, frankly, signed by Joe Biden to get, as he did with Haiti in 2010, 20,000 American soldiers on the ground. We need to see a floating hospital off the coast of Gaza. We need to see helicopters ferrying the wounded, the sick, the dying, backwards and forwards, because at the moment, let me tell you, this safe area in Al-Mawazi, that is no place for people. There are no toilet facilities, there are no medical facilities. That is a recipe for further destruction. That is a recipe for further plausible genocide. When this attack comes in Rafah, which it will do within a matter of weeks, the world will have blood on its hands if we don't see a rapid, massive, global humanitarian mobilization now. And mark my words, unless that happens, we are going to see an industrial scale loss of human life. But the world cannot say it has not been warned.
Chris Gunness, you paint a very grim picture for us, and certainly one that I think our viewers will be mulling over in the coming hours. Thanks so much for joining us from London. Thank you.
My pleasure.